in the world, in the coming couple of weeks. I mean, I
Right.
despise editing, but I've decided that I better do it myself because then
Hmm.
it is fully my vision of what's going on here, and I'm not doing the bang bang, as you know.
Right.
I'll go to the front. I'll go to the front upon occasion, but what I have been doing is talking about people away from the front line and why this is so important, and who these people are called Ukrainians, and why
Right.
they don't deserve to be, labeled with stupid
Hold.
talking points from Russia.
Right.
So
Hold.
anyhow,
Hold on one
that's why
second.
I'm here in
I have.
Odessa.
Yeah. Hold on one second. I have massive buffering happening, so I'm trying to solve that in the interim, if I may. Let me
Hmm.
see if I can close this down.
Hmm.
I'm going to start shutting down. There we go. I'm going to start see if I can start tourniqueting some of um, uh, some of the other bits that might be taking stuff away from us. I don't want that. All right.
I better close all my Pornhub then.
Yeah, exactly. That eats up so much. It really does.
So
Um,
much, so much.
yeah, it's rough.
Uh,
Um, yeah, and then
is it really bad? Because I got a great story from lunch today. That
well,
was weird.
I'm also
Ran into an
hold on.
American,
Yes, I'm also recording
a
this.
MAGA American.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I'm also recording this just specifically so that we can so that if it's not great as far as it um
You can clean it
y-
up in
y-
post.
yeah, I can clean it up. I can post it after the fact. And
Sure.
hopefully that will
I've
um
got my Ukraine because this is so Odessa is it's a port city, but it's also, of course, just
right.
naval maritime stuff. This is kind of this is a sailor motif that they kind of all Soviet and
Gotcha.
post-Soviet guys, um, Ukrainian Coast Guard because they don't have a navy,
Right.
and Russia's navy wear these. So this is my nod to Odessa as a maritime location.
Well, we know I only know I have to say I only know um, of uh, of Odessa because of the movie The Odessa Files, which had an element of like where like post World War II Nazi infiltration of Europe, where they tried to reinvigorate
Yeah,
their control over the area, which they had lost. And in
yeah,
multiple ways, it seems more like a an example of or an allegory, I would say, or for what the Russians were doing. That they were kind of like saying, "All right, we're doing it's Cold War. We don't want to be dicks directly to the Russians all the time, but it's really like, you know, yeah,
And if I remember that movie correctly, I mean, it also touched on some things about how this is undisputed. Well, I'm sorry, this is disputed territory. That
right,
this was territory the Nazis were trying to take. But shame on you for never seeing, as an actor. Shame on you. Well, as a somebody in
uh
the
huh,
film industry, as somebody who's never seen Battleship Potemkin. This is the place of the
oh right, yes,
Eisenstein's Battleship Potemkin. That was filmed here. The famous
okay,
Potemkin steps are here.
right,
Sadly, you can't walk down them because they're in a security area where there's the
mm-hmm,
administration for the port is just at the base of the Potemkin steps, and I am literally 5 minutes walk from there. I'm renting an Airbnb, and I'm behind the line of control, so I have to go around with a little document, and I go every time I go through the checkpoint. There's a checkpoint leading to the Eisenstein's Potemkin steps,
mm-hmm,
or the Potemkin steps, which are so notable in Eisenstein's film. um, it's such a beautiful city, and also, by the way, I'm also literally like 3 minutes walk to where the statue of Catherine the Great used to stand
right,
for, well, centuries, literally. And the Ukrainians have tore it down, and in place of it is a Ukrainian flag. I mean, Catherine was a German
mm-hmm,
empress who was
right,
brought over to Russia and made Russia empire and founded the city of Odessa. And I would have thought the Russians would go more ballistic over the fact that the Ukrainians tore that down now 3 or 4 months ago, maybe more. But they didn't. It's weird. I've got photographs of it, and I'll put it out in social media and all the rest of it. But
Sure.
yeah, it's Odessa. An amazing city with a very deep history. And I spent the day with a journalist whose history is complicated, but basically um, Russian, Ukrainian,
Mhm.
American amalgam, Jewish as well. So there's that ethnicity mixed in all with it because of the Soviet Union, of course. And Odessa is a very Jewish city, so there's that legacy. Anyhow,
Right.
we were walking around town, and I was filming stuff and working with her, and we were talking about a great number of things about Odessa. And one of the things that we did talk about was the fact that prior to the invasion, and then
Mhm.
certainly since the beginning of the full-scale war, um, this was seen as kind of an iffy city. Was it pro-Russian? Was it pro-Ukrainian? What was it? Because it's a port city, it's international, and yes, indeed, it was founded by Catherine the Great. So there's a long-standing, and the general lingua franca here is Russian. So I don't, I get by speaking Russian just
Whoops.
fine here, no issues.
And now
And
I
so there
lost.
was
There you go. Hold on.
a
I
sense
lost
in
your audio
Ukraine
on my end. Give me 1 second.
of where
I'm doing everything I
do
can
Odessa's
to fix it here.
loyalties.
There
And
you go.
she and I had this discussion, and during the discussion, and during the discussion, how much of that did you get or lose or
I
what?
got it. Yeah, yeah.
Anyhow, during the walk and a discussion about how where whose loyalties does Odessa hold, um, she made the point of like, well, it doesn't matter now. I mean, now it's like you're shooting at us,
Mhm.
Russia. So that'll ruin a relationship. Getting shot at by
I
your
agree.
partner tends to
Yes.
soil a relationship, or
Mhm.
soil as well.
Mhm.
The undergarments of whoever's being shot at.
That's right.
But once you start chucking missiles at us, we tend to look unfavorably upon that. So Odessa is now
Right.
firmly in the Ukraine camp.
Right. Give me 1 second. I'm checking on something, and
Hmm.
then I
Sure.
think we should be back to some level of flow now. I hopefully everybody can hear us. Like I said, I'm recording, so
Yes.
I'll be able to fix this afterwards. So uh, I mean, there's a lot to update on, and I'm hesitant to kind of go to the articles I normally cite, but there have been some breakthroughs on on the front where they have crossed some of the Russian lines, their defensive lines. And the idea is that they have like a zero line, a
Hmm.
one line, and then a two line. The two lines the fallback, the one line is the most reinforced, and the zero line is sort of their like where you it's sort of like if you imagine taking a piece of property like a building and then putting sandbags all around it and then just firing from there. The one line would be dug trenches that are meant to stay, fortified actual trenches, mines in front of them, the whole shebang. And then the two line is no mines behind you, but there's physical barriers, the little dragon's teeth, maybe. There's the booby traps, I suppose, and a map of where not to, what ground not to run over, and then a shallower, less reinforced trench that if you get pushed back to it, you start reinforcing, to hold again or whatever. And that's pretty standard. It seems they've
Well,
crossed the one for the first time.
I don't think we have. I don't think we've spoken since Robotny fell. Or did we speak about that last time
It was just
on
happening.
Saturday?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just
So
happening.
I mean,
Right.
that's been a big development. That it's fully, unquestionably now in Ukrainian hands. That's a good thing. Next will
Hmm.
be Tokmak,
Right.
and they'll get. But look, it's not. Everybody has come to the realization
Yeah.
that it's going to really be slow because
Hmm.
they don't want to lose soldiers, and it's
Yeah.
slow and deliberate, and it's just going to be this, as I've been saying for a long time, but it just is what it is. It's
Yeah.
going to be a slow, steady march down the field. Nobody's rushing.
Mhm.
But can they still make it to the sea? I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, we'll see. I hope so.
Yeah,
A lot of that has to do with what the Russians do. Can they
right.
make it can they make it to a position where they can compromise the land bridge and they can make any traffic along the land bridge subject to their artillery fire? Yeah, I think that's a definite. I think that'll
Mhm,
definitely happen. But again,
mhm.
I think last spoke, it is my opinion that the bridge needs to be
Sorry, it's your thought
severed.
that the bridge what?
The land bridge because of general Russian, the land bridge
Yeah,
must be severed.
I
It
agree.
has to be
Yep.
broken. You can't just fire upon it. You have to actually break it. Because until you break it and until the Russians realize, oh my God, we might actually lose Crimea, this place that is the cornerstone of so much.
Yeah.
We've already lost Ukraine. That's going to be, when that realization really sinks in, that's going to be bad enough. But the idea of physically losing Crimea, that will I mean that is what Catherine the
Yeah, it's the
Great,
game
the
changer. I
founder of
agree.
Odessa,
I think
took.
slicing that piece of land in half is the most important thing they can do right now because that division between Crimea and the
Yes,
north will make
100%.
yeah, there's all kinds of um, you know political ramifications of it, strategic ramifications of it. It will impress
No
some of the
Russian leader,
naysayers.
no
Right.
Russian leader survives. No Russian leader survives losing what Catherine took.
Right. That's right.
None.
And so
And I don't care if you were Stalin or Khrushchev or Lenin himself. Had you
right.
lost, had any of those leaders lost Crimea, like Putin is about to do potentially, certainly lost Ukraine, none of them, even the greats like Lenin, even the giants on the Russian stage, nobody could sustain losing what Catherine took. It is a
Right.
quintessential part of their sense of identity and their history and all the rest of it. This will
Yeah.
breaching the land bridge will send them into absolute disarray because
No.
losing Crimea is a
Yeah.
big,
Agreed.
big deal.
So the Pskov airfield attacks that happened overnight also are
Yes.
making a lot of fucking noise because
Uh
it
huh.
started with it was 2 drones initially.
Sure.
The Russians said they shot them down, and then 10 drones followed, and the whole place blew up. And that has, I mean,
Uh huh.
that's a that's a worm turn right there. That is,
$20,000 drones.
yeah,
$20,000 drones taking out 4, 20 or 30, if not more, $1 million. You got to
yeah,
understand. So these are Ilyushin 76s. And
yep,
this would be the equivalent of our C7 heavy mover. And I've
hmm,
been in C7s before.
yeah.
These are the things that we put tanks on and
That's
fly across the
the one
Atlantic.
from the Afghanistan withdrawal that a lot of people have seen, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the imagery yeah, those are what's called a heavy mover.
Yep.
That's the stuff where you put mass amounts of troops in there if you're doing an air assault and you need
Yep.
paratroopers, or indeed you put heavy machinery on there. I mean, they will take tanks, they'll take Abrams,
Right.
and fly them across the Atlantic. This is the equivalent of what they lost in Pskov or I guess last night
Right.
or the night before, was it? It blurs together.
Uh,
But
it's over the it's over the last
four
24
of
hours.
those things, which are 20 to 30 million bucks.
Right.
Right. The 20 to 30 million dollars taken out by a $20,000 drone. Math,
Right.
you know? So, and also, I mean, there was something like 8 cities that the
Right.
Ukrainians sent drones towards. I
Yeah.
mean, mind you, the Russians were shooting 44 cruise missiles at us, and sadly
Yeah.
one got through. But what is interesting to see is that, I mean, this is some of the most best defended airspace in the world right now.
Right.
100%, no doubt about it. The Ukrainians are exceptional at shooting down incoming munitions, whatever it is. 44 out of 44, only one got through cruise missiles, and
Hmm.
that's pretty. I mean, they're still shooting them out of the sky, and so debris falls, but they're not obtaining. And I can tell you, I mean, we got shot at here in Odessa. I heard the alarm.
Right.
and I kind of was groggy and was like, well, okay, and went back to
Uh-huh.
bed. I did not hear the explosion. The explosion, when it was shot down over Odessa, was at the kind of outskirts of town, so I didn't hear the explosion. But
Mhm.
we've gotten so, because of the defenses are so good. Now let's hope they stay that way, and I suspect they will. I don't think they're going to degrade. If anything, they're going to get stronger.
Mhm.
But they can't shoot at us, and we can shoot at them. Is the idea,
Right.
you know? And the Ukrainians
Yeah,
send
I don't
these things in,
I've
and
yet to be able
the
to even
The
fuck
Russians
yeah,
claim to have countermeasures, but they don't.
right. I've yet to be able to process the idea that that they're allowed to invade your country, but if you fire into theirs at all in retaliation or
Yeah,
they're horrified
it's,
and you're the one escalating things.
yeah, it's a
I
terror
don't
attack.
I mean it's so
Yeah,
much like people in a home invasion or fucking BTK or something where it's like if you keep quiet I won't kill you and then you're like he's going to kill us anyways. And the idea is that, you know, you act like,
yeah.
well, if we just play along, we'll live a little longer maybe. It's so odd. The I think it's something like 12 or 13 drone hits, but two strategic airlifters, the IL-76, were damaged. The main fuel depot was destroyed. That was the big fire that everybody saw. Um, and it's interesting that while
I thought they
you
got
know,
four IL-76s. I saw the
they've
reports they'd actually hit four.
well,
Is it
yours
only
might be
two?
yours might be newer than mine or vice versa. But
Oh, I mean,
yeah,
vice versa,
they
exactly.
right.
I
But
mean,
apparently it's a
I might be
record, so you might be
misremembering. I
right.
don't know.
Yeah, you might be right because it's according to
Well,
them,
I
it's a
was
new
running
record
around
of
today, so
yeah.
I thought I saw four.
Right. Oh yes, I see
Regardless,
why you see that.
taking these
Yes,
things out
four
with a
IL.
$20,000 drone.
Yeah, I found it. Four IL-76 airlifters confirmed as destroyed in Russia's Peskov region.
Yeah,
Officially confirmed. Yep.
that's 80 to 120 million dollars shot down with something less than 100,000.
Right.
You
Just
can't
above
sustain that. And
with a
also,
farm with
those
a
those
farmer
70s,
drone.
yeah, those 70s, yeah, basically those
Yeah.
76s are no joke. I mean, that's a
Hmm.
huge, huge thing. And then, and in terms of like what they can do with them, they can move around heavy arm. They can move armor, they can move
Yeah.
artillery pieces all around the country. It doesn't have to be international. We use ours generally. We use ours internationally because those are our transatlantic movers. But
Right.
the Russians, being the enormous country that they are, they can draw reserves from out in the Far East. It might entice the Chinese to start playing around, but if they really needed to, so those are, I mean, obviously they're military aircraft, so they're legitimate targets to begin with. But it's also
Right.
smart targeting on the Ukrainian side because that will diminish their capacity to move stuff around their country
Uh,
quickly and in
I
response to whatever the Ukrainians do. So
I find it
good
completely. I
hits,
also
good
yeah.
hits.
I also find it completely ironic that while Russia is busy trying to take a chunk of Ukraine for themselves, they have lost territory to China officially. Because remember, it was like
Hmm.
last
Yeah.
August, I want to say, it was like a year ago, where Xi Jinping had his meeting with Vladimir Putin, and they came across all buddy buddy. And then as soon as Xi Jinping went back to China, they started listing all of the
Yes.
former territories, the Russo-Sino War,
Yeah. Yeah.
territories under their Chinese name. Well, that's now official. This week they released the official maps of it, and the Soloviev and I think somebody like one of the others flipped out, and we haven't seen Simonyan in a while. Maybe it's just because I'm not paying as much attention because
No,
we
we
got so
haven't.
much stuff going. But she's been
Mm.
kind of on a
Not that
hiatus.
I missed her.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the Chinese state-owned website Cartographic Service of Standard Maps designated the Bolshoi Ussuriski Island as entirely Chinese territory. That's a big fucking deal. Like they're doing the same shit to
Yeah.
Russia that they're doing to the Philippines and Vietnam in the South China Sea. They're just like ours now. Fuck off. We don't agree to any borders and that kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
on a to some degree, like if you're Vladimir
Disputing, bro.
Putin, yeah, if you're Putin, I mean, I don't know how you're not throwing shit at this point. Um, yeah, but I mean, they have an agreement to
He's
split this
he's got
island.
he's kind of got bigger. He's kind of got big.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah,
I just
he's
thought
got bigger fish to fry.
I thought it was a
He's.
dick
I mean,
move
if
when
he
they did
loses
it.
the again, I can't reiterate it enough. If he,
Yeah. I thought it was a
yeah,
dick move when he did it initially, but now they've made it official. And it's on their official maps online and that are printed. So if you buy a map right now in China, there are big chunks of Russia that they have effectively just said, that's ours now. And uh, you know, the deal he made with Prigozhin, we've talked a lot about whether or not there was a real deal made, whether Prigozhin's even fucking dead, whether the idea was part of the deal was you could hang around for a while and then we'll pretend to blow you out of the sky and then you could retire with a giant golden parachute, just leave me the fuck out of it. And, you know, the potential for that. Absolutely possibility, whatever. But can you imagine if part of the deal of like, okay, we'll back you for a while and we'll do this, but we want cheap oil and we get this land back? Can you imagine if at the when all this fucking stuff settles, it turns out that Putin tacitly agreed with this? That said, you know what, we don't need that territory anyways. It's fucking permafrost most of the year anyways. It was always a part of
yeah.
Mongolia. We don't even have any fucking people there anymore. Yeah, just call it whatever the fuck you want. It's yours now. And then, like, that map isn't being redrawn by anybody else because they haven't made that agreement in writing. He just gave it up and said, fuck it.
Yeah, I mean, he. Well, look,
Yeah.
he is part of the Moscow Petersburg power structure within
Mm-hmm.
Russia. So,
Mm-hmm.
when
Yeah.
it comes to Russia, they're far east. They don't really give a shit about it.
Right.
I mean, they do and they don't. It's still, Mother Russia, and it's inside our borders. So how dare you? And they
Yeah.
may jump up and down and scream about it for a bit, but
Right.
the the Eastern territories are there's not a lot of benefit to them
Well,
for
it's the
Russia.
same
As a
thing.
matter of
Same
fact,
thing with China, though. You know,
yeah.
honestly, it's just the value of that land is 1 to 1. It's like I've said, Afghanistan is not the graveyard of empires. It's just every empire who thought this would be a great way to cross the desert into some useful shit just gave up on it eventually. It said, "Fuck this, we'll go around," because there's nothing there's nothing there, especially pre-uranium. Nobody gave a shit. There's nothing to be had. That's why there's 12
Yeah.
tribes there, because they all just stay near the borders where they can leech off the countries around them. That's what they've effectively been. It's that they can, the Bell Maps benefited what are effectively the Afghanis because they could just run on the other side of them, and basically be
Well, and
raiding
it's
parties like a bunch of fucking
why why climb up to the top of the world when it's occupied by a bunch of, I'm sorry, but a bunch of kind of hillbillies up in the holler
Right.
who will shoot at anybody who
Yeah.
comes in there and tries to try to exert
Yeah.
power. They're
It's
like,
like
you're not
Appalachians
coming up.
and the and
They're mountain people.
revenuers.
They're mountain people. Look, you
Yeah.
could argue the Scots are the same way. There's a certain thing about mountain people who go up into the mountains to
Yeah.
like, fuck you, leave me alone.
And
I'm
get
going
high
up into
ground.
yeah, I'm going to go up to the high ground. I'm going to make it real difficult for you to chase after me.
Mm-hmm.
And no better example of that than Afghanistan, because it really is the highest
Right.
populated spot on the planet. So they can say fuck you and to the Romans, to the Indians, to
Yeah.
the British and the Soviets. They can always just be like,
The
well, not
Pakistanis.
the Romans, but the Greeks, the Macedonis, the Pakistanis, sure.
Yep.
Although that's really a complicated relationship, but we're getting off topic here. You're absolutely right. Fuck it, I'm not going to climb that mountain to fight these crazy people
To
who
get
will
to
never,
what?
yeah, to get
What?
to get, and if that's the cost of getting to the other side of the mountain range, is that I'm constantly having my supply chain sniped at, then
Right.
screw it, I'll go around, and that's
Exactly.
if there is a benefit to that part of like Mongolia and Central Asia, and that it's that it's
Right.
that. But there's
Maintaining a
alternatives
train
to it.
line. The only
Oh
benefit,
God,
the only benefit I can see for the eastern part of Russia, essentially, like especially the mid-eastern part of it, You know, the edge part towards Mongolia might be nice part of the year, but that like the general area of like
You
where
go north of
Siberia
it.
is on
You go north of
fucking hell.
Baikal. You go
Yeah.
north of Baikal, and it's fucked. It's fucked.
Yep.
You literally, people that we're kind of okay, but
Hmm.
because this is nothing compared to the importance of Ukraine. Let's
Right.
not first and foremost forget about that. The far eastern holdings of the Russian Empire. Fuck it. Ukraine, Crimea,
Yeah.
really important. So let's not forget
Right.
about that. But also discussing this stretch of like uninhabitable
Yeah.
land is that I had a buddy of mine at CBS who sadly passed away this last year. Lovely guy. He was a CBS radio correspondent by the name of
Hmm.
Bill Gasparini. And Bill was a lovely guy, but he was a little eccentric. And he loved to go out into the middle of fucking Siberia and hang out with the native peoples out there, the who have more
Hmm.
in common with the Inuit than they have with the European Russians.
Right.
They're reindeer herders and they live in yurts and all and their culture because the Bering Sea, blah 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 blah. This is
Right.
ancient history. But one of the things that shocked me about some of the footage that Bill brought back to the CBS bureau when I worked with him in the '90s was footage of how reindeer herders take care of their herd during certain months. Actually, a huge chunk of the year is that they have to bring them into yurts that are smokehouses
Right.
because the smoke will get the mosquitoes away. Because
Right.
whether you not just mosquitoes, but other like blood sucking flies and stuff like that. Because
Right.
it's all this when the permafrost gets to a certain time of year, it just goes to ugly marshlands and all the larvae come out and the
Oh yeah.
insects are everywhere. And these things will literally suck your blood and kill you.
Yeah.
You will die.
Yeah.
You will die if you walk around exposed in parts of Siberia certain chunks of the year because the fucking bugs will suck you dead.
Yeah. Right.
That's scary, man.
Yeah.
That's fucking. Obviously, God is saying this is not for you.
Yeah. Well, and I was
As an
saying the only
atheist,
benefit,
but
like back then, back when humans required on just like either agricultural land, logging, or a water source as a primary reason to secure a piece of land. Then maybe later you had something like gold or or iron, right? That you could get out
or
of the
you
ground. But
yeah, or you
it
want to get something from the Atlantic to the Pacific.
right, yeah. But for the most part, in our modern day and age, there might be rare earth minerals, which are not rare at all, by the way. They're pretty common. They're very hard to produce and toxic. That one of the areas you do it in is where almost nothing lives. That's one of the best places to produce that kind of shit because you're not fucking up the groundwater because there is none. You're not fucking up the air and stuff around there because there's so many other like volcanic particulates and all kinds of other shit. The wind just blows so much it dissipates. Nothing lasts. And even you could create as much industrial smoke as is possible and you still wouldn't make a dent in the environment around you because it's just too far from everything. And so part of this land might in the future be good for getting rare earth minerals out of it, but still the process of doing it is a multi-decade process that's ugly and dangerous and gross and
Mm.
requires a lot of people who are willing to put their lives on the line for very little pay, especially when it comes to Russia and China. And it just doesn't exist in the modern world anymore. And we'd rather innovate our way around it. And it kind of goes to that point of like, find another route to the Atlantic. The same thing is true, of these kind of environments. Like, yes, we could get rare earth minerals out of this shitty ground that's dangerous and cold, but we could probably get them somewhere else. So fuck it, and that might be what this minor pissing contest between Xi and Putin is over this land that
Mm.
nobody fucking wants. But ultimately, it doesn't quite matter. Like this is more
Well, the land itself.
geopolitical. Yeah.
Yeah, the land itself. I mean, having access to the Pacific and the Atlantic for Russia is no small thing. I mean, but
Right.
it's not nearly as. I mean, the point has been made that uh, by people who really dive into the kind of nuts and bolts of a lot of this, but it's like America is a country that both has the Pacific and the Atlantic,
Right.
and because of that, we can exert power on the shipping lanes, which is really where international power is determined. It's not on land, it's at sea. That's where power is. That's where,
Right.
or it has been. It has been. Now, post COVID, and a lot of things. I mean, the international shipping lanes and all that might. There's a lot of talk that might be significantly changing, but
Right.
because Russia has Vladivostok, but it also has St. Petersburg, the problem is, even it's so inhospitable that even a rail line is almost impossible to
Right.
maintain. Certainly, a rail line that's significant enough to trade goods. Now, something we've never talked about, Hal, you and I don't think
Yeah.
so, but is one of my really, it's one of the things I keep a very close eye on with Russia, and that is the Northeast Passage. The Northeast Passage is what is called, because everything is seen through a. Oh no, we have talked about this, but anyhow, regardless, I'll reiterate that
Mhm.
it's the Northeast Passage because everything is seen from a European perspective. Yeah, history
Mhm.
being Eurocentric, is that the Northeast Passage is that stretch of Arctic that goes over the north side of Russia. If
Mhm.
that indeed does melt because of climate change, they've got a trade route through the Arctic, the Russians do, that is going to make Suez,
Yeah.
there's no reason to have Suez. There's no reason to
Right.
even have Panama.
Right.
If you can get stuff from Taiwan to Finland over the top of Russia, with Russia taking a bit of payment for every nautical mile that you traverse. That's going to be huge for them. But we'll see how it goes.
Right.
But that whole dynamic of Russia being this enormous Pacific and Atlantic power is a topic really fascinating to me, but not really relevant to what's happening here in
Right.
Ukraine, because
Yeah.
as much as China nipping away at Russia's Far East, they really don't need a lot of that territory, a huge chunk of that territory. Whereas Ukraine and Crimea not only is logistically and geopolitically very much essential for them, it's also psychologically and historically and culturally. I mean, Odessa is this amazing cultural spot as well, which maybe we should talk about at some point. Um, but it's intrinsic to their sense of self. This territory, not what China is nibbling away at, but Ukraine, in seeking its own self determination, in their eyes, is robbing them of this great legacy of Catherine the Great and Russian Empire. Well,
Right.
tough titties, tough
Mhm.
titties. It's you're going to lose it. You're going to lose. You've already lost Ukraine, and you're probably going to lose Crimea, and they're going to go. They're going to lose the damn minds about it. So,
Right.
um, you know, it's
Well,
it
what's
never
interesting is
stops to be amazing.
it's um the the AMOC, I don't know if you ever heard of like the Atlantic current, the AMOC. There's
Yeah,
been a lot of talk lately that it might have reached a tipping point, and there's this cold zone that if it warms up a certain amount, the circulation will basically effectively stop. Now, it's stopped and restarted multiple times over the millennia, and it's not that weird a thing. But most people assume that it stops and the oceans just start boiling. But the reality is if the heated water doesn't circulate because it's not pulled towards the cold water up there, then it all drops off rather quickly, and the top gets very cold very fast. There becomes effectively an Arctic ring can form really quickly because of the lack of warm water circulating up there to create ice, because there's a certain point where
yeah.
it gets so cold it doesn't create any more ice. But there's a magic window of how cold it can be where there's ice all the fucking time. And that it looks like if that anything like that happens, that area that you're talking about that Russia would have that shipping lane would be the most frozen place on the planet, ironically enough.
Potentially, there's also the argument that while the intense cold might recede and intensify, that along the lip of the land
Yeah.
itself,
Right.
As the ice recedes and gets colder and colder and colder, but recedes. That like I mean, we've all seen condensation. We've all seen what
Yeah.
happens when ice. So ice will recede from something that is you know uh,
Yeah.
potentially warmer than it, i.e., land. So I mean, it's like taking a those a roast that your mom would put in the ice box
Yep.
and cover it in aluminum foil, and she would take it out, and you would see the frost but along the edges would be the first places where things start to get it would yeah it would get colder and colder and colder as it moved along the mass of the roast.
Yep.
But the first things to go would be the edges. So
Yep.
that's what they're count. And also, by the way, these motherfuckers in Russia are scary enough that they're actually proposing breaking it up with nukes. And also contributing to this concept is that they're putting hundreds and hundreds of $1 million into ice breaking, nuclear powered ice breaking ships.
Yeah.
If your economy is such as Russia's is, which we all know is overblown and which is anemic at best, uh, you don't chuck that kind of money at brand new a fleet. I think of 7 atomic, and these things are freaking massive. They're huge. I've always wanted to go and do a story about them, but
Right.
they're enormous, and they're building 7 what they consider state of the art nuclear power plants,
Right.
icebreakers. So they're betting on that. They're
Right.
putting some infrastructure into that. Will it happen before the Russian Federation disintegrates because of a humiliating defeat in Ukraine?